A man is arrested without explanation, charged without evidence, and prosecuted by an invisible court. What would you do if the walls of reason began to melt? Beat. Step into Franz Kafka's unnerving universe. 1. Arrest at dawn. When normality shatters. Our story opens on Josef K, a respectable bank officer who wakes on his 30th birthday to find strangers in his boarding house room. Beat. They announce, with chilling calm, that he is under arrest. Yet they offer no warrant, no accusation, no permission even to put on proper shoes. Beat. Joseph wavers between irritation and disbelief, the very fabric of his ordinary morning life tearing at the seams. Throughout this first episode, Kafka establishes the novel's central tension, the collision of mundane routines with an absurd legal machine. Beat. Though K is technically under arrest, he is neither jailed nor prevented from going to work. He is merely not free, in an atmosphere thick with unspoken threat. These contradictions plant the seeds of emphasis to anxiety that will gnaw at him for the rest of the narrative. Joseph's decision to attend his office as usual, convincing himself nothing has changed, illustrates the human impulse to cling to normality even when reality has veered into nightmare territory. Beat. In these early pages, Kafka also sketches the oppressive social setting, a boarding house packed with curious lodgers, an officious landlady eager for gossip, and two shabby warders who embody casual cruelty. The lack of clarity around K's supposed crime showcases Kafka's core theme, the systematic stripping of an individual's agency by faceless authority. As Joseph leaves for work, the warders remind him to appear for an interrogation at a time and place they refuse to specify precisely. Beat. Already, the ground beneath him is unstable. Readers feel the tightening grip of a system whose rules are forever shifting, a bureaucratic hall of mirrors in which logic itself becomes suspect. Kafka's brilliance lies in narrating these events with calm, almost clinical language, making each absurd detail feel eerily plausible. By the end of the arrest scene, we realize that Josef K is no longer a citizen among equals. He has become a defendant in a silent, omnipresent tribunal, one that mirrors the quiet, beat, yet relentless oppressions lurking in any modern society. 2. The invisible court. Seeking order in chaos, determined to confront his nameless accusers, Joseph sets out to locate the court. Beat. His summons eventually directs him to a dilapidated tenement attic, where he must navigate dark staircases and stifling corridors, a physical echo of his psychological descent. The courtroom he finds is cramped, airless, buzzing with gawkers who treat the proceedings as Sunday entertainment. Beat. Here, Kafka dramatizes the gap between public spectacle and private terror. Joseph tries to deliver a reasoned defense, believing that clarity will cut through the nonsense, yet every sentence is met with smug smiles and whispered mockery. Beat. The examining magistrate barely listens, more interested in the notebook doodles of a teenage clerk than the defendant's words. Joseph's speech becomes a monologue shouted into a void, underscoring how institutional power silences even the articulate. Beat. In this section, we encounter Kafka's concept of guilt without cause. The court's officials speak as if K's guilt is self-evident, requiring no proof. Kafka uses this premise to explore larger existential questions. Is guilt a social construct, or does it arise from deep within the self? Joseph's mounting frustration, his sudden sweats and dizzy spells, suggest an internalization of blame. Beat. He begins to suspect that perhaps some unknown transgression really does stain his soul. The audience laughs when he tries to examine court files. The clerk claims the documents are inaccessible because they are written for officials only. Beat. Kafka thus critiques systems that hoard information, keeping citizens in a perpetual state of uncertainty. The scene ends with an assistant usher pressing a woman's fan into Joseph's hand, a bizarre souvenir of indignity. It is a reminder that the court infiltrates all areas of life, turning even random interactions into unsettling transactions. As Joseph exits the attic, sweat-soaked and short of breath, he realizes the court can summon him or ignore him at will. Beat. This knowledge initiates a slow erosion of self-confidence, a creeping awareness that his life is no longer his own. The emphasis, labyrinth, has only begun to unfold. 3. Allies or traitors, the seduction of complicity. Desperate for help, Joseph solicits advice from anyone who might know the court's secrets. Beat. He visits his uncle Karl, who introduces him to an advocate named Huld. Bedridden, ancient, surrounded by gossiping maids and jealous clients. Huld promises to craft intricate petitions, yet months pass with no progress. Beat. The advocate's household becomes a microcosm of systemic decay. Files pile up, whispered rumours swirl, and Huld's nurse, Lenny, attempts to seduce Joseph with offers of clandestine assistance. Beat. Kafka blurs the boundary between intimacy and manipulation. Every favour comes with strings that tighten around Joseph's neck. Lenny insists the court officials are fond of her, that she can nudge them to glance favourably at Joseph's case. But her affectionate whispers double as warnings, intimating punishments too vague to name. Beat. Meanwhile, Kay meets Block, a merchant who has spent 5 years and his entire fortune fighting charges as nebulous as Joseph's. Block crawls like a dog at Huld's bedside, begging for updates. The degrading spectacle horrifies Joseph, who suddenly sees a possible future version of himself, financially ruined, spiritually broken, yet still hoping for mercy from indifferent authorities. Beat. Kafka uses Block to illustrate how prolonged uncertainty corrodes dignity. The longer one contends with the invisible court, the more one internalizes its judgments, absorbing shame by osmosis. Amid these encounters, Joseph tries a different strategy: self-representation. Beat. He dismisses Huld and approaches the painter Titorelli, rumoured to supply judges with artwork in exchange for influence. Titorelli describes 3 potential verdicts, all variations of stalled or temporary acquittal, none final. Joseph finally grasps the truth. The process itself is endless. Beat. The court grants reprieves only to prolong dependence. Freedom is dangled like a carrot, never actually given. Even the painter's studio, stifling with the odour of drying varnish and colonized by giggling schoolgirls, reinforces the theme of suffocating entanglement. Beat. By the end of this section, Joseph's quest has shifted from proving innocence to merely escaping the system's tightening loops. He senses that each supposed ally, Huld, Lenny, Titorelli, serves the court in some hidden capacity. Trust becomes a liability, companionship a trap. The emphasis, net, tightens around him, as if complicity is the court's most effective weapon. 4. The final night, surrender to the absurd one. Year after his arrest, Joseph's will is frayed. Beat. He drifts through bank duties like a ghost, haunted by sleepless nights and fruitless tactics. On the eve of his 31st birthday, 2 warders arrive, dressed in shabby frock coats and top hats, a grotesque parody of formal executioners. They lead Joseph through silent streets to a deserted quarry at the city's edge. Beat. Kafka's prose here grows stark, almost ritualistic, stripping the scene of extraneous detail to focus on Joseph's psychological state. He feels a dull resignation, as though the events were unfolding in someone else's body. Beat. Yet a flicker of defiance remains. In a last gesture, he resists by refusing to wield the knife against himself when the warders offer it. They settle the matter efficiently. One holds Joseph's throat, while the other drives the blade into his heart, twisting it twice, like a key. Beat. The execution is gruesome yet eerily bureaucratic, paperwork performed with cutlery. Joseph's final reflection, like a dog, captures Kafka's brutal insight into dehumanization. His cry is both protest and confession, pinning blame as much on himself as on his killers. The impersonal quarry, the indifferent moonlight, the absence of witnesses, all convey the existential isolation that defines Kafka's universe. Beat. The shocking ending forces listeners to confront a paradox. The court's verdict is never formally announced, yet punishment is executed with chilling precision. Guilt becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, enforced through collective compliance and individual passivity. In this last tableau, Kafka delivers a bleak but profound message. When systems operate without transparency, they devour the human spirit, reducing people to silent cogs, or worse, complicit spectators. Beat. Joseph's extinguished life is a cautionary symbol for any society that allows bureaucratic machinery to churn unchecked. His death resonates beyond the novel, haunting every reader who has ever faced a closed door, a stamped form, a voice that says, "It's not my responsibility." The emphasis, abyss, between individual conscience and institutional power has swallowed another soul, and in the echoing silence, we recognize our own vulnerability.